from wherever you happen to be. It's the SNL Hall of Fame podcast. And now, here's your host, curator of the Hall, Jamie Dew.
I think I need an umbrella, an umbrella to keep those little twinkles away from this gorgeous mane of hair that I have going on. It feels like those twinkles would be damp, they just feel like damp twinkles. Again, I want to thank Casey Lyons for creating that theme and Doug Donatz, the wonderful VO man, for doing a tremendous job with the VO. Welcome to the SNL Hall of Fame podcast. I am Jamie Dew, and it behooves me to ask you to wipe your goddamn feet at the door. This is a special place. In case this is your first time here, the SNL Hall of Fame is a weekly podcast where I invite a guest to come on the show and add a nominee to the ballot in one of four categories: cast member, host, musical guest, or writer. From there, once the ballot is filled, we turn it over to you, the listener, who becomes you, the voter. And you will have an opportunity to select many of your favorites. If they achieve 51% of the ballot, they will be inducted into the SNL Hall of Fame. How exciting is that? Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's very exciting. And what's even more exciting is today we are featuring a real special cast member. It sounds trite of me to say special in light of the fact that he has passed away, but I truly can tell you that I would tell you that Norm Macdonald was special even if he were still alive and kicking right now. Norm Macdonald was my first year university hero. He was the man that got us to leave the pub and go and watch Weekend Update. We wanted to see what bizarre shit he would do. And we really, my little group really enjoyed it. He spoke to us and we loved it. So it's suffice to say, I've followed his career, his sitcom. He had a sports show. I loved his podcast. If you haven't listened to his podcast, find the one where he speaks to Super Dave, Bob Einstein. And that is just a tour de force of comedy greatness. But there's also some really oddball ones too. There's a Billy Bob Thornton one that's really good. It was a tremendous podcast, and that sort of segued itself into the Netflix show. But earlier this year, we learned that, during all of this, Norm had been battling cancer, and he courageously fought and didn't let any of us know, didn't let us inside the curtain to know how bad he was hurting and the treatments he was going through. And to me, that is a tremendous blow when the news came out that he had indeed passed away. It was a very sad day for me, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. So I'm real fortunate today to be joined by an SNL scholar, Andy Hoglund, who will take us through the career of Norm Macdonald and why the trajectory that he was on in only 4 short years leads to a spot on the ballot of the SNL Hall of Fame. I don't want to make too fine a point of it, but the man could have been a genius. He could have been a genius. And we're going to explore that genius today with Andy and the help of a sketch and just some great reminiscing, some great storytelling from Mr. Hoglund. So I will throw it over to the interview at this point. I encourage you to listen on. Let me know what you think. Send me an email, jamie@snlhof.com, if you agree with us or if you think we're out to lunch. This is Andy Hoglund on Norm Macdonald.
I think that's kind of the consensus around Norm is you felt like he was the comedian or the anchor or the cast member that got it, and you and he were on the same side and kind of looking at things with the same skewed, arched eyebrow. So even, if I'm not old enough to have been of age when he was really, the guy at the update desk, you always, from his talk show appearances, to his stand-up, or his roasts or whatever, you always kind of felt that kinship with him, that you understood the world and comedy in a way that few others didn't. That was his magic.
Oh yeah. There's a great quote from Lorne, or it's actually from Norm, talking to Lorne, about making Michael Jackson jokes. And Lorne saying, do you really want to be sued by Michael Jackson? And Norm being like, yes, yeah, that would be the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
So just not giving a shit, but being, sort of punk rock and being like ahead of it feels like he was one step ahead of us the whole time. This is a guy that started on the show as a writer, hired at the same time as Sarah Silverman, Dave Attell, and I'm blanking on the last one, Jay Moore. It was Jay Moore. And really, if you think about it, he's the only one that managed to, make it out of that little group on SNL, and be a standout on SNL, despite what Rolling Stone, might tell you. So that's really interesting to me. And it's also interesting to me that he comes of age at a time in, the mid 90s where there's sort of a cynicism, going on, and his voice, sort of echoes that. And for me, really spoke to it. Like, he was an absolute can't miss, on Saturday nights for me. But you, Andy, are the guest here, and I'm curious about what you think in terms of Norm Macdonald and, those earlier years.
I mean, he kind of comes in at this tail end, but before the Groundlings really seize back control of the show, and that, performance style starts to redefine what SNL is. Lauren's return to the throne, so to speak, in the mid 80s, it starts out with that kind of bizarre Anthony Michael Hall season, right? And then he kind of doubles down on the fact that stand-up is all the rage. And, a lot of the heavy hitters, Hartman and Lovitz aside, or Mike Myers, maybe my ratio's off, but a ton of them are stand-ups, right?
Yeah.
Schneider, Sandler, Spade. And Norm is kind of the last of that era to kind of break in, and is kind of around as the show is transitioning into the Will Ferrell, Catan style comedy, which I would argue is kind of still there in the show's DNA. I mean, you do see stand-ups in the current SNL, but you don't really see that. You don't really feel that singular voice, that bad boy edge that you did in the early 90s. And Norm is kind of the last torchbearer there. He comes in 93. Moore and Silverman don't make it. Attell, it doesn't really break through. He stays a writer and leaves quietly, essentially. But Norm is able to kind of gel and get along with folks, as Farley and Sandler and Schneider leave. I think he overlaps with Spade the most out of that bunch. But I just find it fascinating, these guys who they come up during this definitive era in the early 90s, which, was an extension of the late 80s troupe. But then you also associate him being on the show with Will Ferrell, so he's a bridge in that sense.
He really is. And there's nobody else that really made it and
again,
as
like
that bridging.
And like you said, Norm was, or his comedy could be very cynical. I'm not sure that he was cynical as a person, but he had that very singular edge, that stand-up mentality, and yet here he is, in sketches with Molly Shannon. It's very interesting that he's deceptively, what's the word, versatile, I guess.
I would say so. I was thinking tonight, as I was going through my notes, and it was like, you can name half a dozen Norm characters, as well as the fact that he was the anchor of Weekend Update, and he was only there for 4 years.
And this is someone who comes into the game being like, I'm not a sketch performer. I'm not this. I'm not that. I'm a stand-up, and that's it. And no, exactly right. I have a couple points here that I want to make as part of my case. And the first one is he's a deceptively great impressionist. Yes. And you don't think of Norm having any kind of range. He has that sort of cadence, that everyone can impersonate, that sort of flow and delivery. You don't think of him as being, like a Daryl Hammond or a Jeff Richards or a James Austin Johnson. And you don't really think of him as a Dana Carvey either,
No.
And yet, for a stand-up and someone so upfront with their limitations as a performer, he has several home run impersonations. Yes. His Burt Reynolds and his Bob Dole being the most iconic.
Yeah.
But man, like his David Letterman, his love letter to Letterman, his Larry King is great. Even his Tarantino is great,
I love his Tarantino.
I don't know if I'll go to bat for his Tommy Lee per se. Or his Andy Rooney is great too. I'm just looking at the list right now.
I totally forgot about Andy Rooney.
Yeah. I love, I think it's the Jim Brewer story, which has a homophobic undertone or overtone about Chris Kattan. It's when Pamela Lee's on, I guess, and Kattan is heckling Norm trying to nail a Rod Serling impression, and then when it came time for air, Norm just busts out this A+ Serling, So anyway, I don't want to belabor the point, but deceptively great impressionist. You can't. Who's more iconic than his Burt Reynolds? His Bob Dole is one of the great presidential candidates.
Absolutely.
Even if he's channeling Aykroyd a little bit when he does it, you never would have thought about it. He's understated. I think I used that word before, but he's understated and deceptively strong at doing impressions.
Absolutely, yeah. I just and that was with, again, sitting at the desk. There's no other weekend update anchor I can think of outside of Jimmy Fallon, who was thrust into that role, really, that did what Norm did.
Yeah, exactly. You kind of think of Update being an island, so to speak.
That's right. It certainly has become that, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's almost noteworthy when you see Colin Jost popping up as Mayor Pete or something,
Exactly.
But Norm was a part of the show, which kind of harkens back to, Chevy Chase was part of the show. He wasn't just resigned to Update. He would appear in sketches.
Right, of course. That was
and then you kind of go through a weird lull when it's not even known as Update, right?
Right.
And then by the time Lauren comes back and Dennis Miller really takes the reins, he sort of reasserts that, no, I do Update, and besides a handful of other sketches, you don't really see Miller and stuff.
No.
When Kevin Nealon goes to Update, he kind of withdraws from doing sketch work to an extent.
Yep.
But you see Norm doing a lot of different things during his time on the show.
Right. And that time on the show was such a small amount of time, 4 years. And he left such an incredible mark.
Yeah. Can actually, let's contextualize Norm a little bit for a moment, shall we?
Yeah.
When SNL 40 came out, famously, Rolling Stone ranks Norm near the bottom of their list of, cast members. Like he's like 135 out of 140 or something like that, you know?
It's brutal. Yes.
It's like almost malicious how like they call him a Dennis Miller clone, which you're like, what? Like, what were you guys smoking, man? Like, can I get a hit of that? Like, Dennis Miller clone? Like, what are you talking? Like, do you watch the show?
They both had dark hair, I suppose.
Yeah. Like, we should have a podcast where we make the case that Norm is a Dennis Miller clone. I would listen to that. Like what would be the argument, you know? But yeah. So let's start there. That Norm has always been underappreciated to a certain extent, which actually goes to his appeal. The fact that he comes out and he's like, I'm not a performer. I'm not this. I'm not that. I'm not good at this. I'll tell jokes that aren't funny that the audience hates. You know, like he is so contrarian about it that it feeds into this inclination to, you know, rank him low or think past his skills or think past his contributions. But that's clearly a mistake because now, you know, I feel like, especially now he's departed, which is so crazy. But to me, he's a near consensus pick for greatest Weekend Update anchor of all time.
I think he's on the podium for sure.
Yeah.
If he's not gold medal, he's on the podium.
Yeah, well said. And that's just, you know, again, I'm 35. It's just an amazing watching that trajectory in real time, going from, you know, he gets fired from it and Rolling Stone ranks him almost dead last. And, you know, again, like hindsight's 2020 when people pass away. But I think even before that, people were reevaluating him and being like, okay, like he sort of set the, you know, to use your gold standard a little bit.
I see what you did
in
there.
terms of update. Like you definitely see it in Chost and Che. They're definitely trying to channel Norm when they're doing their thing, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
But yeah, he's kind of set the mold a little bit. I mean, for a long time it was Chevy and everyone was kind of living up to Chevy's mold, but now I kind of think it's Norm a little bit, you know, like
yeah, I think so too.
Like it's Norm and Chevy, and I don't know who else you'd put on, like you just said, like the Olympic gold medal, bronze type stuff. Like maybe it's Norm and Chevy and Tina Fey, maybe, in terms of influence. Like who was really influential, you know?
Oh, that would be, I think that's a very strong pantheon there. Yeah, I think so.
And I am a Dennis Miller guy. I love Dennis Miller.
Me too.
You know? Like everyone hates on him now, but I love what he did at Update. I think he kind of set the ship right, you know. But that's a different podcast.
I was 14 watching him or 13 watching him, and to me he was the absolute coolest guy on the planet.
I'm sure he had like the long hair and you know the snark and the giggle. I mean, that's a different show entirely. You know? But yeah, I mean, how can you even? You know, I mean, so many people have told the stories about the Norm arc at Update, you know, and going in with Jim Downey and you know, wanting to kind of be the punk rock of comedy, essentially, and then taking on the bosses, getting thrown out, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like myth at this point. You can't imagine it in today's landscape.
Well, it really the narrative has really changed in terms of, and I'm not sure what the absolute truth is, and if we'll ever really know, but the narrative of his leaving Update, you know, always was the Omeyer stuff. And then in more recent years, it's that he was in that island of I don't careness, you know, just him and Jim Downey just sitting there, you know, not taking orders from anybody and just doing whatever the hell they wanted.
Right.
And enjoying themselves. And he almost thinks that now. Or he, you know, he said toward the end that might have been more what it was.
I mean, I think it's depending on your perspective and your vantage point. It's kind of both, you know. I don't think that it's this cartoonish, you know, he took on the authority and you know, it's not a movie, right? Like the fact is that NBC executives and I think Norm said this maybe, they're watching Jay Leno and they're seeing him in his monologues kill it, like hit home runs every night, 5 days a week or whatever. And then they're watching Norm and it's crickets. And I think, you know, these guys are running a business, you know, they're not, you know, they're not doing this for charity. They're like, what's the deal here? Like, why is this sinking the show so bad? I think that's their vantage point. It's not a crazy idea either, you know?
Well, do you, like, I mean, there are some where you do hear the audience, like, do nothing. They just don't react to the joke or the punchline of the joke. Like, what do you suppose that was? Was that him just being that ahead of the curve, or the audience not knowing what the hell he was talking about, or were they really sort of just not digging what he was giving them?
I think it's like all the above, but I think with Norm, he went in there determined to not pander. It was anti-pandering comedy. It was landing the jokes that he wanted to land and the way that he wanted to land them. And again, it really was that sort of outlaw country style of joke telling, just the rawest distillation of comedy. And, when you're operating on that terrain, like not everyone's going to kind of catch your drift. And, he's telling jokes about, Frank Stallone and whatnot, like it's just very, you have to kind of appreciate it,
Yeah, Frank Stallone. My gosh. You got to hand it to Lorne here, kept him in the gig for a while. And if you believe what you read, that was the reason Al Franken left the show, was because he didn't get the update. And right. Norm got it. And to me, that would have been a real easy move for Lorne to go to Al Franken and sort of
buddy.
His buddy, get sort of more of what has been going on. I think it would have been a throwback. I love Al Franken, so I don't think it would have been bad by any stretch, but it sure would have been different than what we ended up getting.
Yeah, I mean, you look at what Franken did right after joining, Air America, talk radio, whatnot. Like that probably would have been what Update was in some form.
Almost an early Daily Show or something like that.
Right. Or, some extension of some of his Update pieces, right? Like he was not a stranger to Update, so it's not hard to kind of squint and imagine what that alternate universe would have been like. That's kind of one of the, alternate scenarios, as is, the discussions around giving Norm a co-host, like Laura Keitlinger or something, which a little bit is a black eye on Norm's, legacy, how he reacted to that.
Yes. Yeah. He said some pretty terrible things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, it's part of it. It's all bundled together, right? You can't just, sanitize the guy.
No, and nor should we. And I don't think, ultimately, Norm wore that. But let's move on. About a year after Norm leaves the show, and he leaves the show sort of in a strange boat, right? Because it's December. The last episode of December is his last episode behind the Update desk. And then he comes back the next year and stays on for about half of the second half. And then he's gone.
Right.
So what do we know about the way that went down? Like, was he pulled from, like, it's confusing to me, because if he was like fired, then why wasn't he fired like right away? You know what I mean? Like, he lingered.
Well, they fired him from Update desk, and they wanted him to go back to sketch work. Celebrity Jeopardy and all that, which we should probably talk about. And I think that at a certain point it's kind of embarrassing, right? It's like you've lost the big gig, and you've been downgraded to demotion,
right?
In a sense, right? I think at some point he comes out with Dirty Work, right? I'm trying to think of that was 98. I'm trying to think of when he would have, been filming that and whatnot, because I think that's the summer. So it's probably, he's got Dirty Work on his plate at that point. So maybe he's just kind of rolling with it a little bit.
Gotcha. And then he's gone. And then, Dirty Work comes out that summer. But then the next year he comes back to host the show.
And what kind of surprised me about that is he has a sitcom at that point, but it's not an NBC sitcom, you know? Like, the Norm show's on ABC, but it's just, this guy is always the underdog. He's always kind of coming back and popping. Like, it's not like he's promoting anything, or, I mean, he's promoting a sitcom, I suppose, but it's on a different network. It's not like he's got a movie out or anything, right? Like,
Yeah.
like, I think he's in, like, Man in the Moon, but that's like Man on the Moon, but it's like, that's a cameo, you know? He's playing
It's
Michael
so
Richards.
strange.
Yeah. Like, Screwed doesn't come out until that summer, or the next summer, I think. But yeah, it's really interesting.
So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about some of his, sort of memorable moments or marquee moments. Like, what would be if there were a video below his plaque in the Hall of Fame, what would it be playing?
I would say, Celebrity Jeopardy, obviously.
Yeah.
Right. The Bob Dole stuff, obviously. I mean, probably the car accident sketch with Stallone, right?
I don't remember that one.
Oh, you don't remember that one where Stallone comes upon Norm? Norm's just been in a car accident, and as he's laying there dying, all Norm can talk about is like how like Oscar sucked, and like Stop or My Mom Will Shoot sucked. And eventually, like, Stallone, like, punches the guy, you know? And they're like, how could you punch, someone who's, going into a coma or whatever, you know? I mean, I think Cobras and Panthers is probably up there, right? With Robert Downey, the return of Robert Downey Jr.
I did not. Yes, you did.
Hey, knock it off. Remember, you're both Cobras.
Yeah. We're both Cobras.
Yeah, we gotta stick together.
Yeah.
You're a Cobra boy, and don't you forget it, 'cause when you're in trouble, you won't have to sweat it. You're a Cobra boy. All right, so, let's see.
What the hell was that?
Hey, what was what?
You just sang.
Oh, yeah, I did, didn't I?
Hey, guys, the heat's on.
What's up, Johnny?
The Panthers, they got Rocco. They messed him up real bad.
That's it. We Cobras are going to fight back. We're going to hit them with all we got.
You bet. We're gonna hit 'em with all we got. And us Cobras, we got a lot.
We're fast and we're strong and we're tough. We'll teach them the meaning of rough.
'Cause we're the Cobras, so you better look out. What?
How you come up with a song so fast?
No, just came to me. What about?
Just came to you. It was perfect. It was like you rehearsed it or something.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, look, here's what we're going to do. You go over to me.
Hey.
What?
Did you really like it?
What?
The song.
Did I really like it? Yeah, I liked it. Hey, I like another song, too, you know? You know this one? It's called, While You Were Singing, I Got Stabbed in the Head by a Puerto Rican.
Do you know that one?
I don't know.
Ah, shut up. Look, here's the plan. Get over here, guys. The Panthers hang around 34th and Main. They're pretty juiced by midnight. And that's when we strike.
Right.
That's when we...
That's when we strike. We're gonna hit 'em at night. And when the Cobras are done, there won't be a one left standing. So look out, Panthers, 'cause we're the
Whoa. What the hell is this? What are you doing?
We're being Cobras.
Ah, look, that's it. What is up with you guys?
What? He started singing, then he started singing, then he started singing, then he started singing. So I started singing. It happens.
No, it does not happen. This was clearly choreographed.
Well, he was dancing, and I saw what his legs were doing. I kind of copied it like that. Yeah,
Don't ask. It's...
The Panthers are coming to get you! Yeah, I saw them down the street!
Okay, now listen up. Here's the plan. We're going to ambush the Panthers. And here's how we're going to do it. Johnny, go over there. Big Jake, you get over here. The rest of you, hide behind me.
What should I do?
What should you do? Beat it!
Well, what do we have here? Looks like a little cobra all on his own. Yeah. Hey, you don't look so tough without your boys. No. Right. Hey, Panthers, it's time to stomp some cobra.
Yeah! Come on. Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Johnny! Oh, no, that's not good. Okay, Big Jake! Oh, God, this isn't working out. No, what the hell are you doing?
We're being cobras.
What do you call that being a cobra? Boy, show them what it means to be a panther. Panthers! Meow!
Cobras.
Panthers!
Meow! Cobras.
Panthers!
Meow! Cobras.
Panthers!
Meow! Cobras.
Combined with Update, those would be my 4 or 5, Hall of Fame plaque moments.
Yeah. Celebrity Jeopardy is a wonderful showcase for people doing impersonations. Like letting some of the people do some of their quirkier impersonations, and then you get Ferrell with his Trebek and of course Daryl Hammond. Just a wonderful idea, but Turd Ferguson, like, where does that even come from? And it remains like, I don't know whether I saw it more this year because of his passing, but at Halloween, I saw so many Turd Ferguson costumes this year.
As well you should.
Just a big hat.
And I actually tweeted about this somewhat recently that, there's been some discussion about the origins of Celebrity Jeopardy. Steve Higgins credits his wife for coming up with the initial concept, which led to him kind of writing it with Adam McKay. But Norm, as we know, says that he got the idea from Halfwits, from SCTV. So it's one of those, who's the real authors? It's some combination of the truth type of thing.
Man, if only we had access then that we do now, so that we could see, this person wrote this sketch and this person, if there were a physical SNL Hall of Fame and it housed the scripts, or
right
pages that we could look back on and just see, because it's got to be clear. Right now, we're just hearing two different stories.
Right. I mean, I think Norm and Higgins wrote a lot of them. Let's just take a moment and talk about Celebrity Jeopardy. It first comes out almost 25 years next month. I don't know what day this is going to air, but it comes, I think the first one is December 7th, 1996. You have Ferrell as Trebek, Norm as Burt, Daryl Hammond as Sean Connery, and then Martin Short from Halfwits is Jerry Lewis. And I think Norm had said that he created the sketch to get his Reynolds on the show.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And apparently apparently Burt Reynolds was a fan of Celebrity Jeopardy, which surprised Norm, understandably, and I think Reynolds wanted to come on the show and punch him out sometime. And that would be like the premise, like kind of how like Joe Pesci came to the Joe Pesci show or whatever. Right. But I think Norm was fired from SNL before they could ever implement that. Yeah.
Pay it off.
Right.
Oh, that's a shame. That's a darn shame.
Yeah.
I can see, if it didn't go the way it did, I can see him being, just staying in New York and just doing the show, like continuing to do the show now. And that just wasn't the case then, it was,
no. Yeah.
Most people did like a 3 to 5 year stint, and that was it. And it got me thinking about other people who have done 3 to 5 year stints. And outside of you know, the people that really exploded, Belushi, Farley, Eddie Murphy, you know, that did 3 to 5 years and were just tour de forces. I don't know that there's a cast member in that bracket that's, you know, Aykroyd made a bigger mark on, left a bigger mark on the show.
Well, certainly not in the last 2 decades, right?
Yeah.
Like now it's everyone stays for so long. And you have cast members who, you know, they do their 3 to 4 years before they really break out, right? Like
that's what it seems like now. Yeah. Like baseball now.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's like Melissa Villaseñor, I love her, but she's been on for 6 years and still kind of feels like she's in her second or third year, right?
Absolutely. She shows up in what, 2 or 3 sketches,
right?
You know, and as a 6-year person, you would think she'd be the anchor of the show,
right?
Like using the old school metrics, I suppose.
Right. So I mean, you brought up Norm hosting SNL, right?
Yeah.
And I think beyond that, he just makes one other appearance, doesn't he?
He's on the 40th.
Well, I'm not counting the special. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Then I don't recall.
I think the only other one, I'd love for your listeners to fact check me, but it's the Goodnight Saigon sketch with Will Ferrell, I believe. You know, a lot of former cast members and hosts, they come out at the end. Remember, they're singing Billy Joel, and Norm comes out with Artie Lang, and that's the only time that Artie Lang has ever appeared on SNL.
And the legend of that is that he was on Mad TV the same night, right?
Right. Yeah, so I think that's the last time that Norm shows up.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. Then other than, you know, like he certainly wasn't in the bad books, like it didn't seem, but yeah, he just didn't.
He did his one and that was it, besides the 40th, like you said.
Yeah, he wasn't the kind of guy to just show up in New York and pop on the show, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, again, I don't think that that's because he's in any sort of bad books or anything, but just not the vibe.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, if you had to sum it up in a short paragraph or so, why does Norm Macdonald belong in the SNL Hall of Fame?
Like we said, deceptively great impressionist, near consensus GOAT for greatest update anchor, great sketch writer, whether it's Celebrity Jeopardy or not. But also, look, he loved the institution. He was a student of comedy. He respected his elders. You know, we've seen that from so many different podcast appearances. He loved talking about SNL. He loved talking about his interactions with guys like Eddie Murphy or Rodney Dangerfield. So you brought up cynicism, and I don't disagree that was his style, but as a person, I don't think that he was a cynic. I think that he genuinely loved comedy, obviously. The Letterman appearance is iconic. And I think he loved being on SNL, which you're right. Like, there's, again, an alternate universe where, you know, Norm could have stuck it out for longer. Norm could have come back more, you know, like he was on Conan O'Brien so many times. Why wasn't he popping up in SNL more, you know?
Good point. Really good point. Because he was, he was virtually a second Andy Richter on Conan O'Brien. He was on there so often.
Yeah. In fact, I tweeted about this not too long ago that apparently Norm's frequent booking on Conan's Tonight Show was, you know, in a weird twist back to the update controversy, one of the reasons why Conan was eventually singled out and let go. That, you know, you have the bully pulpit of Tonight Show. You can practically choose whoever you want to be, booked, and you select Norm Macdonald. Which, again, it's like network executives don't get that. Guys like me and you get that. Like, true comedy fans appreciate that, but that doesn't play for a lot of people.
Wow.
I'm just looking through a couple of my notes right now. I just want to rattle off a couple stats and get your reaction about Norm, especially since, you know, this is part eulogy, right? It's not just candidacy for his Hall of Fame. It's also a tribute to the guy. Will Ferrell co-wrote More Cowbell with Donnell Campbell and submitted it You remember the host, Christopher Walken, right?
Yeah.
He originally submitted it for the Norm episode.
Really?
Yeah, so think about that.
Oh my gosh.
So
that would be...
Yeah, imagine that as Norm in the producer role.
Holy. Yeah.
I think Norm or Lauren wasn't sure about the premise, though I think it still played. I think Seth Meyers has talked about that it was submitted a bunch of times before it made it on air.
That's fantastic. What a great poll.
Here's another little trivia nugget for you. 1993, or that era, Norm Macdonald, who's his office mates?
Isn't it Rock and Farley and Sandler?
Well, I think at one point it was Spade and Mike Judge, I think, had an office with them.
Oh my gosh. That's a great room.
Yeah.
Norm and Mike Judge together. Wow.
Norm Macdonald's favorite Weekend Update joke. Yippee! Jerry Rubin died last week. Oh, sorry about that. Yippee! Jerry Rubin died last week. So that goes in the reel. That's got to go in the reel, right?
Yeah.
That and the homosexual pedophile or David Hasselhoff are like the best update jokes.
Is that the Lisa Marie Presley and Michael Jackson?
Yeah, he's a homosexual pedophile.
She's a stay-at-home gal.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, this has been really wonderful talking to you about,
of course,
the late great Norm Macdonald, who spells his name strange.
Yeah, he really spells it out.
Yeah. Norm Macdonald, but there's no uppercase D. Usually there's an uppercase D in the Donald, and he goes lowercase. So
right.
He's a cool cat to the end. Andy, where can people get more of you?
They want more of me, man. I'm living on the Twitter, you know.
Dude, you really do.
I'm always there, always on the Twitter. That's at SNL in Review. It's the SNL in Review experience. Follow me or just watch passively and don't follow me. Either way. But I also write the Entertainment Weekly recaps for SNL. So if you guys want to check out the show, I'm writing those in real time too. So I'm delirious when I do them.
They're great. If you don't read them already, what are you thinking? Just start reading them because they're really
thank you.
They're really fun. Yeah.
Thanks, man. I'm writing them like as the show's happening. So sometimes I like read it back and I'm like, oh, that's an interesting insight, or oh, I was way off there. But yeah, I like to include like, you know, SNL alum giving their commentary. Like Siobhan Fallon just gave some commentary on the Kieran Culkin episode. You know, I have Jeff Richards on a bunch, Gary Kroger, people like that.
Very cool.
But yeah, and then if people want to read my my Vulture interviews, I did one with Jim Belushi a couple months ago. So I try to like actually like meet the people out and hang out with them, get a feel for who they are.
Very neat. Very neat. Well, thanks so much for stopping by.
Yeah, of course. It was always a pleasure, man. Thank you for having me.
Well, that's it for another episode of the SNL Hall of Fame podcast. I really want to thank Andy for joining me. If you're not reading his stuff on EW and the occasional interview that he does elsewhere, he mentioned Vulture in the sit down that we had, you're missing out. This is a real passionate fan who's got a great way with the keyboard, and the man lives on Twitter. He's been serenading us recently with some really great Colin Jost information, but he's always got interesting tidbitting up on Twitter. So there's that. I thought it was a great conversation, and I thought that we covered the bases. You know, there's going to be people that suggest that I should have put some Weekend Update jokes in there, but I feel as though when Norm passed, most fans sought that out themselves, and I thought that it was nice to throw in a little sketch rather than to show the versatility that Mr. Mcdonald had and delivered on the show. So that's it for this week. Please rate and review us if you don't already or haven't already, and share and subscribe. Share using whatever social media platform is the hot one of the day, or subscribe to us wherever it is that you get your podcasts from. That would be real helpful. I thank you so much for listening. If you've got any information for me, you want to drop me a line for any reason at all, of course you can do that at jamie@snlhof.com, and I look forward to hearing from you. But for now, that's what I have for you. And as you walk past, turn out the lights, because the SNL Hall of Fame is now closed.
Thanks for listening to the SNL Hall of Fame podcast. You can find everything you need to know about the show at snlhof.com. Don't forget to subscribe, share, rate, and review the show wherever you get your podcasts. This is Doug Denant saying, this is Doug Denant saying, see you next month in the hall.
Podcasts and such.